Let's talk about something simple but powerful, dopamine. This is not just a feel-good molecule, it's your motivation, your drive, your ability to push through discomfort and chase goals. And here's the best part. You don't need an hour, a supplement stack, or a fancy routine. You can boost dopamine in just 3 minutes. Natural light exposure is one of the most accessible and powerful ways to naturally boost dopamine and improve mental and physical well-being. While it might sound overly simple, the mechanisms behind how sunlight affects our brain are deeply rooted in human biology and supported by neuroscience. Dopamine is a key neurotransmitter involved in motivation, reward, learning, and movement. The retina of your eyes, specifically the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells (IPRGCS), has direct connections to brain areas that control mood, alertness, and circadian rhythms. When natural light enters the eye, especially in the early part of the day, it triggers a cascade of activity in these neural circuits, stimulating dopamine release in areas like the striatum and prefrontal cortex. Morning sunlight exposure is particularly potent because the blue light spectrum is most concentrated during those early hours. This light serves as a signal to your brain that the day has begun. As a result, your circadian clock is aligned, cortisol levels rise appropriately, and dopamine levels increase to promote alertness, drive, and focus. This rise in dopamine isn't just a fleeting burst. It lays the neurochemical foundation for sustained energy and motivation throughout the day. You feel more capable, more willing to take on challenges, and more emotionally balanced. One of the key benefits of light-triggered dopamine is that it happens naturally without artificial overstimulation. Unlike dopamine spikes from scrolling on a phone or eating junk food, which can lead to eventual dips and emotional crashes, sunlight provides a more stable, regulated form of dopamine activation. This supports better mood regulation, lower anxiety, and even a reduced risk of depressive symptoms. In fact, several studies link lower levels of sunlight exposure to seasonal affective disorder (SAD), a form of depression that occurs during periods of low daylight. The reduced sunlight results in lower dopamine and serotonin activity, leading to lethargy, low mood, and a lack of motivation. Natural light exposure is also a behavioral anchor. It encourages people to get outside, move, breathe fresh air, and engage with their environment. All of these behaviors have independent benefits for dopamine, but sunlight is often the trigger that gets them started. Even just standing near a window, if going outside isn't an option, can offer a measurable benefit. The key is to avoid filtered or overly dim light. What matters is brightness, ideally above 10,000 lux, to stimulate the retinal cells that influence dopamine circuits. The timing of this exposure matters. The earlier in the day you get natural light into your eyes, the more powerful its effect on setting your biological clock and boosting dopamine. The first 30 to 60 minutes after waking are especially critical. Ideally, spend 2 to 10 minutes outside without sunglasses, but not staring directly at the sun. Just being under the open sky, especially with ambient brightness, even on cloudy days, can be sufficient. On overcast days, the brightness is still far more intense than indoor lighting, which typically falls well below the threshold needed to activate the dopamine-related pathways in your brain. In addition to dopamine, early morning sunlight also affects melatonin, the sleep hormone. When your retina senses light in the morning, it suppresses melatonin production, helping you feel more awake. This suppression has an indirect benefit. It resets the internal clock so that melatonin can rise again properly in the evening, supporting better sleep. Better sleep, in turn, enhances dopamine sensitivity and balance. So you're not just getting a short-term dopamine lift from sunlight, you're supporting a 24-hour cycle that keeps your neurochemistry healthy and balanced. There's also emerging evidence that natural light can improve eye health and potentially reduce the risk of myopia in children and adolescents, which may also be linked to dopamine signaling in the retina. This highlights how deeply interconnected light, vision, and neurochemical health really are. The beauty of natural light exposure is its simplicity. It doesn't require effort or cost, only consistency. The body is wired to respond to environmental cues, and light is the most powerful of them. In a world full of artificial stimulation, getting back to something as basic as stepping outside each morning may be one of the most profound ways to improve mental clarity, energy, and mood through dopamine. You're not forcing the system, you're aligning with it, and in just a few minutes each day, that alignment can change how you feel, think, and act. Brief physical movement, even as little as 30 seconds to 3 minutes, has a profound impact on brain chemistry, particularly on dopamine levels. While most people associate exercise with long workouts or structured fitness routines, neuroscience reveals that short bursts of movement can stimulate the release of key neurotransmitters like dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, all of which contribute to improved mood, motivation, and cognitive function. The beauty of this mechanism lies in its simplicity and accessibility. You don't need a gym, equipment, or even a change of clothes. What matters most is intensity and engagement, not duration. When you perform a quick, high-effort movement, such as jumping jacks, push-ups, burpees, squats, or sprinting in place, you activate the sympathetic nervous system, often referred to as the fight or flight response. This activation leads to an immediate cascade of neurochemical changes, including the rapid release of dopamine in brain areas such as the striatum and prefrontal cortex. These areas are associated with focus, decision making, and goal-directed behavior. Dopamine acts as a signal that something important is happening, and in this context, your brain interprets the sudden physical activity as a signal to wake up, pay attention, and be ready to perform. This response is not arbitrary. It's an evolutionary adaptation. In nature, bursts of movement often meant danger, opportunity, or the need to act. The brain learned to pair movement with alertness and heightened awareness. Dopamine is the chemical that drives this association. When you replicate this pattern, even in the safety of your home or office, your nervous system responds in a similar way. It sharpens attention, increases motivation, and temporarily elevates mood. In practical terms, this means that doing something as simple as a 60-second set of bodyweight squats or a round of mountain climbers can create a noticeable shift in how you feel. You might feel more energized, less foggy, and more focused. That's dopamine at work, priming your brain to engage with the world, and the effects aren't just fleeting. These short sessions, if repeated regularly, can train your brain to associate effort with reward, a powerful reinforcement loop that strengthens discipline and drive over time. Physical movement also boosts blood flow to the brain, delivering oxygen and nutrients that support neural function. This improved circulation enhances the efficiency of neurotransmitter signaling, making dopamine and other brain chemicals more effective at doing their job. Additionally, movement stimulates the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, a protein that supports the growth and resilience of neurons. BDNF has been called fertilizer for the brain. And while it's not dopamine, it supports many of dopamine's functions by making brain circuits more adaptable and resilient. Importantly, these benefits don't depend on being an athlete. You don't need perfect form, a six-pack, or the latest workout app. All you need is willingness. Set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes and move your body vigorously, enough to elevate your heart rate and breathing. It's okay to get a little uncomfortable. In fact, that discomfort is part of what signals the brain to release dopamine. You're telling your system something important is happening, get ready. Another benefit of brief physical movement is that it breaks inertia, often the hardest part of any task. Whether it's writing, working, or even getting out of bed is starting. Dopamine plays a central role in initiating behavior. A short burst of movement can serve as a behavioral catalyst, giving you just enough dopamine to push past resistance and take action. It's a biological primer for productivity. These short movement sessions are also valuable for emotional regulation. Physical activity helps regulate the limbic system, the part of the brain involved in emotion, especially stress and anxiety. When you move, particularly in short, sharp bursts, you not only increase dopamine, but also decrease cortisol, the stress hormone. This combination can leave you feeling both calm and energized, what's often called relaxed focus. The flexibility of brief physical movement also means you can insert it throughout your day. Between meetings, during breaks, or when you're feeling stuck, a quick set of squats or a short walk with vigorous arm swings can refresh your system. Think of it as a reset button for your brain chemistry, natural, fast, and free. Ultimately, what matters is not the type of movement, but the consistency of using your body as a tool to shift your state. Your brain is wired to respond to movement with increased alertness and reward, and dopamine is at the heart of that response. You don't need an elaborate plan, just a decision to move. When you do, even for a minute or two, you're engaging one of the most reliable ways to enhance dopamine naturally, powerfully, and sustainably. Cold exposure is one of the most immediate and reliable ways to trigger a significant neurochemical response in the brain and body, especially when it comes to increasing dopamine levels. Though it may seem uncomfortable at first glance, immersing the body or even a part of it, such as the face or hands, in cold water or stepping into a cold shower can create a surge of dopamine that lasts well beyond the exposure itself. This effect is not just anecdotal or motivational in nature. It's backed by solid neuroscience and physiological responses rooted in how our bodies handle stress and environmental challenge. When you expose yourself to cold, the body perceives it as a controlled stressor. The nervous system immediately ramps up in response, activating what's known as the sympathetic nervous system, the same system responsible for alertness, arousal, and readiness. Within seconds, this leads to a sharp increase in the release of norepinephrine and dopamine in the brain. These two neurotransmitters work together to increase alertness, focus, motivation, and overall energy. In fact, studies have shown that cold water immersion can increase dopamine levels by up to 250%, with effects that can last for several hours after the exposure ends. This surge is not simply a reaction to being cold. It's part of the brain's adaptive process, a way of telling the system that it needs to wake up, mobilize resources, and stay alert. Dopamine plays a critical role in this process because it governs how we respond to challenges. When dopamine is elevated through cold exposure, it creates a sense of mental clarity, physical energy, and even elevated mood. What's unique about cold induced dopamine is that it doesn't come with a crash. Unlike dopamine spikes caused by artificial stimulants or highly processed rewards, cold exposure supports a longer, more sustained dopamine elevation that tapers gradually, not abruptly. Another remarkable aspect of cold exposure is that it helps rewire the brain's relationship to discomfort. Dopamine is tightly linked to motivation and resilience. By intentionally choosing to expose yourself to an uncomfortable, but safe, stimulus like cold, you train the brain to associate challenge with reward. Over time, this builds a stronger, more resilient dopamine system, one that doesn't rely on instant gratification or external rewards. You become more capable of doing hard things because your brain has practiced linking effort and stress with chemical reinforcement. This shift is powerful in daily life, where resilience, focus, and motivation are often undermined by overstimulation and avoidance of discomfort. There are several ways to engage in cold exposure, and none of them require expensive equipment. A cold shower is perhaps the most accessible option. Even a 30 to 90-second blast of cold water at the end of your regular shower can be enough to trigger the dopamine response. For those who want a more intense effect, immersing the body in a cold bath or tub filled with ice water can significantly enhance the experience. However, even localized exposure, such as dunking your face in a bowl of ice water or placing your hands in cold water, activates the vagus nerve and sympathetic nervous system, contributing to the same neurochemical benefits. The key to maximizing the benefits lies not in duration, but in intensity and mindset. The moment you want to get out, that moment of strong resistance, is often when the most dopamine is released. Staying calm while enduring the stressor, even for a few more seconds, teaches the brain that you can face adversity without panic. Breathing slowly and deeply during exposure helps reinforce this message and taps into the parasympathetic system to balance the stress response. Consistency also matters. Cold exposure should be treated like a training tool, not just a one-off shock. Engaging in it daily or several times a week compounds the neurochemical effects over time. Not only will you build a stronger dopamine system, but you may also notice improved mood, reduced baseline anxiety, and greater emotional control. These are not just byproducts. They're signs of a nervous system that has become more efficient and resilient. Importantly, cold exposure does not replace movement, light, or sleep, but it adds a distinct layer to how you regulate dopamine and build mental strength. It's immediate, effective, and requires nothing but a bit of courage. In a world where so much of our environment is designed for comfort and ease, cold exposure offers a natural way to train your brain to meet challenges with clarity and energy. And all it takes is a few seconds of deliberate discomfort to access one of the most powerful neurochemical responses available. Goal visualization is a powerful and science-backed method for enhancing dopamine levels and strengthening the brain's motivational circuits. When you vividly imagine achieving a meaningful goal, whether it's finishing a project, crossing a finish line, receiving an award, or even simply overcoming a personal hurdle, you activate neural pathways that mirror those engaged during real achievement. The brain doesn't make a sharp distinction between actual events and vividly imagined ones, especially when emotions and sensory detail are involved. This makes visualization a highly effective tool for priming your dopamine system and preparing your body and mind for real-world effort and success. Dopamine is fundamentally linked to the anticipation of reward. It is not just released when you achieve something, but also in the moments leading up to it, when you believe that the effort you're putting in will pay off. Visualization taps directly into this anticipatory mechanism. When you create a mental image of achieving a goal, You simulate the reward experience, and the brain responds with a rise in dopamine, particularly in regions like the ventral tegmental area VTA and the nucleus accumbens. These areas are central to the reward system, and when they light up through visualization, you get a burst of motivation, energy, and clarity about what you're pursuing. What's particularly valuable about visualization is that it's portable and self-directed. You don't need any tools, money, or external environment. All that's required is your focus and willingness to engage the mind in detail. For the visualization to work effectively, it must be vivid. This means including sensory details, what you see, hear, feel, even smell, as well as emotional intensity. For example, if your goal is giving a great presentation, don't just picture yourself standing at the podium. Imagine the lights, the feeling of confidence in your chest, the sound of your voice echoing clearly, the reaction of the audience, the pride that comes with finishing strong. These multisensory layers enhance the realism of the visualization and make it more effective at triggering dopamine release. Another key element is repetition. The more often you mentally rehearse achieving a goal, the more deeply those neural circuits are reinforced. It's similar to physical training. Repetition strengthens the connection between neurons, making the desired behavior or outcome more familiar to the brain. This repetition also makes you more likely to act in alignment with the vision. In fact, studies involving athletes, performers, and business professionals have shown that individuals who regularly engage in visualization are more consistent in their efforts and more resilient in the face of setbacks. Goal visualization also has a feedback effect on your emotional state. Because dopamine is involved in drive and pleasure, visualizing success can improve your mood, even if your current reality is stressful or uncertain. This is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about giving your brain a taste of what it's working toward. That taste is enough to shift your internal state and make taking action feel more worthwhile. Over time, this strengthens your ability to self-motivate, especially when external rewards are delayed or unclear. Importantly, effective visualization doesn't mean ignoring the work required to achieve your goal. In fact, combining visualization of the desired outcome with visualization of the effort and obstacles along the way makes the practice even more effective. This technique, sometimes called mental contrasting, involves picturing not just the win, but also the challenges and how you'll overcome them. This prepares your brain for discomfort, aligns your dopamine system with effort-based rewards, and increases the likelihood of follow-through. Even a few minutes of goal visualization each day can have a measurable impact on your focus, discipline, and emotional regulation. It's best practiced in a calm, distraction-free environment, first thing in the morning, during a midday reset, or just before engaging in a task that requires high motivation. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and run through the scene in your mind with clarity and purpose. The goal can be big or small, long, term or immediate. What matters is the emotional resonance, the sense that this matters to you and that success is both desirable and possible. This form of visualization is not about fantasy or escapism. It's a neurological primer for action. You're training your brain to recognize and seek out reward, to stay on course when things get tough, and to link effort with a sense of purpose. Dopamine is your ally in this process, and visualization is one of the most direct and reliable ways to access it naturally. Over time, this practice becomes more than mental imagery. It becomes a foundation for sustained action, clarity, and resilience. Delaying small pleasures is a remarkably effective method to increase baseline dopamine levels and train your brain for long-term motivation and satisfaction. In a world where instant gratification is always just a tap away, whether it's scrolling through social media, indulging in snacks, or binge-watching entertainment, learning to resist immediate rewards can seem counterintuitive. However, the neuroscience of dopamine shows that by intentionally delaying gratification, you strengthen your brain's ability to regulate motivation, increase resilience, and recalibrate the reward system to function more effectively and sustainably. Dopamine is not just about experiencing pleasure. It's primarily about the pursuit of pleasure. It drives behavior, focus, and effort toward goals. When you constantly indulge in quick, easy rewards, your brain adapts by reducing its sensitivity to dopamine. This adaptation is called dopamine downregulation. The baseline levels of dopamine drop, and the same activities that once felt enjoyable no longer give the same satisfaction. This is why someone might feel flat or unmotivated after long periods of overstimulation from things like junk food, video games, or constant online scrolling. On the flip side, when you delay small pleasures, you create space for dopamine sensitivity to reset and for baseline levels to recover. This doesn't mean cutting out all joy. It means consciously choosing when and how you experience reward. For instance, deciding to wait until after a workout to enjoy a favorite snack, or finishing a challenging task before checking your phone, might seem like small decisions. But these acts of delay send a strong message to the brain. Effort comes first and reward is earned. That shift rewires dopamine circuits to associate pleasure not with passive consumption, but with purposeful action. Each time you delay gratification, you're engaging the prefrontal cortex, the brain's decision-making and self-control center. This strengthens your executive function, the very system responsible for long-term planning, goal setting, and impulse control. Over time, these choices build a more resilient brain, one that's less reactive and more proactive. You'll find it easier to focus on hard tasks, avoid distractions, and push through discomfort because your dopamine system is no longer hijacked by easy access stimuli. Delaying small pleasures also makes those pleasures more rewarding when you do experience them. The contrast between effort and reward heightens the dopamine response. Imagine spending the day on a challenging project and then treating yourself to a favorite meal. That meal will likely feel far more satisfying than if you'd had it earlier, without having accomplished anything significant. This heightened response is due to increased dopamine receptor sensitivity, which can develop when dopamine isn't being constantly spiked by trivial activities. Essentially, by spacing out your rewards, you increase their impact and preserve your brain's ability to feel joy. Another powerful aspect of delaying gratification is that it reduces your dependence on external stimuli. Many people unconsciously use small pleasures as emotional regulation tools. Scrolling when anxious, snacking when bored, or gaming when overwhelmed. These behaviors provide momentary relief, but often come with a long-term cost, a dulled reward system, and reduced motivation. By choosing to delay these comforts, you train your nervous system to tolerate discomfort and boredom, which builds emotional resilience. You no longer need to escape every dip in mood. You learn to ride it out, and as a result, you grow stronger. This discipline can be practiced in simple, everyday ways. You can wait 10 minutes before indulging in dessert. You can postpone watching a video until after completing a task. You can leave your phone in another room while working. These decisions seem small, but they compound. Each time you say "not yet," You're reinforcing the neural pathways that support patience, self-control, and long-term thinking. You're building a mind that can prioritize meaningful goals over fleeting comfort. Importantly, this practice is not about deprivation. It's about intentionality. You're not punishing yourself by delaying rewards. You're training your brain to savor them more deeply and to connect them with real accomplishment. This shift has long-term effects. People who regularly delay gratification tend to be more successful, focused, and emotionally stable. Their dopamine systems are balanced, not overtaxed, and as a result, they can engage with life's challenges more fully and with greater satisfaction. In a culture of immediacy, delaying small pleasures is a radical but essential act. It teaches you that the best rewards come from effort, and that true satisfaction grows when you align your dopamine system with meaningful pursuit. By mastering this one habit, you can reset your brain's reward circuitry, increase motivation, and create a deeper, more durable sense of happiness. Physiological sigh breathing is one of the simplest yet most effective tools for regulating your nervous system, quickly reducing stress, and increasing dopamine in a sustainable way. This technique, which mimics a natural reflex humans and animals perform during moments of physiological or emotional tension, consists of taking 2 inhales through the nose followed by a long exhale through the mouth. While it may seem too easy to be powerful, research shows that this form of breathing can quickly downshift the autonomic nervous system from a state of stress or anxiety into a state of calm, improving mental clarity, emotional regulation, and even motivation. When you're stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, your breathing often becomes shallow, erratic, or unconsciously held. This directly impacts your nervous system, signaling to the brain that something is wrong, which in turn escalates the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. But breath is a unique tool in that it's both automatic and under voluntary control. That means you can intentionally use it to influence your physiology. The physiological sigh taps into this pathway. By mimicking the natural double inhale and extended exhale that the body performs during emotional resets, like crying or yawning, you send a strong signal to the brain and body that you are safe, that the stressor has passed, and that it's time to calm down. The first inhale expands the lungs partially, and the second, shorter inhale helps open the alveoli, the tiny air sacs in the lungs that can collapse during shallow breathing or prolonged stress. This fully inflates the lungs, allowing for more efficient oxygen exchange. The long exhale that follows activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest, recovery, and regulation. This exhale reduces the heart rate, decreases muscular tension, and shifts your brain chemistry. In particular, it leads to a subtle but meaningful increase in dopamine, especially when the breathing is repeated a few times and practiced regularly. Unlike the dopamine spike caused by scrolling social media or eating a sugary snack, where you get a fast hit followed by a crash, breathwork, like the physiological sigh, supports dopamine in a more stable way. You're not spiking your system, but rather nudging it toward balance. That small rise in dopamine is tied to a feeling of renewed motivation, a sense of clarity, and often a desire to act. Many people report that after just a few cycles of physiological sighs, they feel less reactive, more present, and more capable of focusing on what really matters. One of the most compelling aspects of this practice is how quickly it works. In as little as 30 seconds to 2 minutes, a few cycles of this specific breath can dramatically alter your internal state. It's portable, free, and requires no tools or external resources. You can do it at your desk, before an important meeting, after receiving difficult news, or whenever you notice stress accumulating in your body or mind. It's a nervous system reset button that you carry with you at all times. Regular use of physiological sighs can have cumulative benefits. Over time, people who practice this form of breathing report reduced baseline anxiety, improved mood stability, and a greater ability to stay centered under pressure. That's because repeated activation of the parasympathetic system through breath reconditions your brain to recognize that you have agency over your internal state. You're no longer at the mercy of external stressors. This sense of control, even in small moments, supports long-term mental resilience and a healthier dopamine system, one that doesn't rely on external validation or immediate gratification to function. Physiological sighs also provide an excellent tool for transitioning between mental states. If you're stuck in a procrastination loop, frustrated with your progress, or simply feel overwhelmed, a few rounds of this breath can interrupt the stress feedback loop and give you just enough clarity to take the next step. That momentum, even if small, builds on itself. Dopamine is highly responsive to progress, and when you create a shift in your internal state, the brain interprets it as a kind of forward movement. This increases the likelihood of staying on track and continuing to pursue meaningful goals. What makes the physiological sigh even more remarkable is how natural it is. This is not some esoteric technique. It's something your body already knows how to do. When you cry, laugh deeply, or recover from fear, your body performs these sighs spontaneously. By learning to control and deploy this mechanism on demand, you align yourself with a deeply rooted biological system designed for self-regulation and resilience. In an overstimulated world where our dopamine circuits are constantly being hijacked by fast, easy rewards, practices like physiological sigh breathing offer a return to balance. They reconnect you with your body's built-in mechanisms for calming, focusing, and restoring motivation. With nothing more than your breath, you can lower stress, boost dopamine in a sustainable way, and train your nervous system to stay calm, alert, and ready for what truly matters. Thank you.